When most of us hear that interest is forbidden in Islamic finance, our minds usually jump straight to loans, right? But what if I told you that the principle goes way deeper than that, all the way down to a simple hand-to-hand exchange of goods? Today, we are diving into something called Riba al-Fadl, and it's a concept that's less about debt and a whole lot more about the mindset behind fair trade. All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to unpack why this whole idea is so much bigger than just loans. Then, we'll get into the nitty-gritty with the 6 commodities rule. I've got a great story about dates that really makes this all click. After that, we'll connect the dots from these ancient rules to our modern world of money. And we'll wrap it all up with a really beautiful, simple principle that just ties everything together. Okay, so first up, beyond loans. You see, to really get a handle on this, we've got to look past just the rule itself, the what, and really dig into the why. What is this rule actually trying to prevent at its very core? And that question right there is the heart of it all. See, the prohibition of interest, it isn't just some dry, technical rule about loans. No, it's about tackling something much more fundamental, that human impulse, that mindset of always trying to get an unfair little extra in a trade. And that is what we call Riba al-Fadl. It's often translated as the interest of excess. So picture this. You're trading 1 kilo of really good, high-quality wheat for, say, 2 kilos of lower-quality wheat, right there on the spot. It's that kind of imbalance in a like-for-like trade. That's the bullseye this rule is aiming for. So you might be asking, what's the logic behind this? Well, think of it like this. The major Quranic prohibition on interest in loans. That's like a big, heavily locked front door. Riba al-Fadl, that's about making sure the small, sneaky back door is boarded up too. It's a preventative measure, you see. It's designed to stop that whole mentality of seeking unfair gains from ever taking root, long before it can grow into actual exploitation. And here's a classic analogy that just explains this idea perfectly. Imagine a major sin is like a royal sanctuary, a protected area you absolutely cannot enter. Well, by prohibiting even these smaller transactions that just kind of look like interest, the rule creates a buffer zone around it. It's telling you, hey, don't even grease your flock near the fence, because if you get too close, you just might accidentally wander in. All right, so this idea of a buffer zone is a great principle, but how do you actually apply that in the real world? I mean, where do you draw the lines? The answer, as it turns out, was to start by defining some really clear boundaries. And it all began with 6 specific commodities. Yeah, a very famous prophetic narration lays out these 6 specific items. You've got gold and silver, basically the currency of the day, and then 4 staple foods, wheat, barley, dates, and salt. These 6 things became the original benchmark for this entire rule. So, from this, 2 really simple but powerful rules emerge. Okay, so rule number 1, if you're trading the same kind of thing, gold for gold, dates for dates, it has to be an equal amount, and it has to be immediate, hand-to-hand, no delays. Now, rule number 2, if you're trading different kinds from that list, let's say wheat for barley, the amounts can be unequal. That's fine. But, and this is key, the exchange still has to be immediate. That on-the-spot requirement is what prevents it from ever turning into a form of debt. Sometimes the best way to understand a rule is to see it in action. And there's this incredible real-life story about dates from the time of the Prophet that just illustrates this principle perfectly. So the story goes like this. One of the Prophet's companions, Bilal, comes to him one day and presents him with some really, really high-quality dates. And the Prophet, he's curious. He asks, "Where did you get these?" And Bilal explains what sounds like a totally reasonable deal. He says he traded 2 measures of his regular lower quality dates to get just 1 measure of these amazing ones. I mean, it seems logical, right? A simple trade of quantity for quality. But the Prophet's reaction, it was not what you might expect. His response was immediate, and it was emphatic. He said, "Oh, this is the very essence of riba. Don't do this." So, why? Why was this a problem? Because even though it seemed harmless, it was an unequal exchange of the exact same commodity, dates for dates. It was the perfect example of the kind of transaction that cracks open that back door to an interest-based way of thinking. But he didn't just point out the problem. He gave a clear solution. He told Bilal, instead of a direct barter, do this. First, sell your low-quality dates for money, for dirhams. Then, take that money and use it to buy the high-quality dates you want. See what that does? It introduces a neutral go-between, money. and it lets the market set the price for both items. This completely removes the potential for one person to exploit the other in a direct, unequal barter. Okay, that is a really powerful story, but it does raise a pretty big question, right? How does a rule about dates and barley and gold from 1400 years ago, how does that possibly apply to our modern world of dollars, euros, and digital transactions? Well, to bridge that huge gap, scholars had to do some serious detective work. They had to figure out what's called the ilat, which basically means the underlying reason, or the effective cause, for the rule. They asked, what is it that these 6 things have in common? Because if they could crack that code, they could then apply the principle to all sorts of other things. And what's fascinating is seeing how different schools of thought tackle this. For example, the Hanifas figured the common link was that these were items sold by weight and measure. The Shafis, on the other hand, said, no, the key is that they're either food or a form of currency. Meanwhile, the Malikis focused on them being staple, storable foods. So you see these different lines of reasoning, but what's amazing is that they're all trying to get to the same destination, upholding that core principle of fairness. Now, despite all those different technical views, there is one key point of consensus that has a huge impact on us today, and it's this. When you exchange one currency for another, say dollars for euros, it absolutely has to be done on the spot, immediately. This is the modern-day application of that ancient hand-to-hand rule, and as you can imagine, it has massive implications for things like the modern foreign exchange market. All right, for our last point, let's just zoom all the way out. Because above all these specific rules and technical details, there's this overarching ethical guide. It's a principle that's all about caution and really peace of mind. It's really interesting. One of the Prophet's closest companions, Omar, once said he wished that the Prophet had spelled out the limits of riba even more clearly. He was basically acknowledging, hey, this stuff can get really complex, and there are gray areas. But in that very same spirit of acknowledging the complexity, he gave this timeless piece of advice to act as the ultimate guide. He said, leave that which makes you doubt, for that which does not make you doubt. It's so simple, yet so profound. Basically, if a transaction feels murky, if it's a gray area that makes you uneasy, the guiding principle is to just step away. Choose the path of absolute clarity. And this principle of clarity also helps us see where the rule doesn't apply. For instance, what about trading animals? Can you trade one big, strong camel for 2 smaller ones? Yes, absolutely. And this is an area of clarity, not doubt. And why is that? Well, because animals aren't like gold or wheat. They're not fungible. They're not standardized commodities. Each one is unique, so the rule simply doesn't apply. And so this all leaves us with a really important question to think about. Beyond all the specific rules for dates or gold, how can this core ethical principle, the idea of leaving doubt for certainty, how can that serve as a kind of moral compass for us right now as we try to navigate the incredibly complex financial world of the 21st century?